everybody. Welcome to Let's Talk About the Real Shit. I am Naomi, one of your hosts, and I've got Lori in the house.
Hey, peeps.
I love it. We are super excited tonight to record. It is Halloween, so happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween.
We have Brian Kim in the house, and he is representing Decriminalized Nature Portland. So we're going to get into that tonight. Hi, Brian.
Hey, guys. How's it going?
Awesome. Welcome to the studio.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
So because it's Halloween tonight, you guys, I thought I would start this podcast with a ghost story.
Here we go.
Have you guys ever had anything paranormal happen to you?
Yes.
You have?
Yes.
No.
Have you?
No.
What about you, Alex? Awesome. So we got some people here who have had these experiences and some who have not. So about 8 years ago, I think it was like 8 years ago, maybe 10. This was before iPhones, guys. I know, what a crazy thing. We just had these flip phones. And I was sitting in this bar in Boise, Idaho, and I was in a black booth. There was a black painted wall behind me. No mirrors, no pictures, nobody around me. I was completely sober because I was super poor. Like, trust me, I would have had a beer if I had money. But I was just sitting there waiting for my friend to get done playing pool. So she comes up to me and she takes this picture of me. And I remember smiling for the picture. And then she goes off and is playing pool. I remember feeling very, very drained. Like, I was heavy. I felt very just kind of part of wherever it was that I was cameo, just, it was very interesting. And I felt very alone. Nobody was around me, but I was watching everybody around me. So I was being very observant. So a couple days later, my friend goes, "Get your ass over here. You have to come see this picture I took of you." So this is like old computers, probably Windows DOS or something.
Those big, nice box monitors.
So it wasn't really that clear, the picture is not that clear. And it was also super dark in there. But if you went to the side angle of the computer, you could see this face next to me or behind me. And it was behind my left shoulder.
Goosebumps right now.
Okay, so you know how you can just brighten a picture?
Yeah.
Like, that's pretty easy to do. You can see this woman's headband. You can see her eyes looking at me, her nostrils, her mouth is open like she's screaming at me. Her face is looking kind of down at my ear on my left side. And then you see her some hand on my left shoulder, kind of chest area. And you can see her nails all sharp with like black around the bottom part. Anyway, it was the clearest picture that I personally have ever seen of a spirit. And it's with me.
Wow. That's terrifying.
So I have to say this picture is pretty famous in that, in my friends in those days, and people get super freaked out. I'll post it on our social media. You guys.
We need to post that.
I'll post it I'll post it. It'll be up by the time this podcast is ready. So I'll post it. But it's very real, and I remember not feeling. I wasn't having bad thoughts. So it wasn't like a
but you
negative.
Felt heavy.
I felt heavy because I heard that's what they do is they drain your energy.
Well, yeah,
it's like they drain batteries. Actually, that's another thing that we've heard about. The paranormal. So I've been hyping myself up. It's been very fall in Portland and like fog, and like some mornings have been foggy, and I've been listening to paranormal stories.
You're trying to open yourself up to it.
Well, it explains a lot because through my whole life, I can actually relate to several of these experiences. So this is not the first experience that has happened to me. So anyway, I will post that photo, guys. That's my ghost story. I know she was trying to tell me something, but I think that my gut instinct tells me, I think that I know what she was going to say to me, but I don't know, because at the end of the day, we don't know shit.
Right.
All right. So next we're going to go to Lori. She's going to take over with her badass thought of the day.
All right. So here's the thought of the day. Do not shrink back from something you desire because it's too risky. Just being alive is risky. And I think that speaks to kind of our topic and what Brian and his friend Alex are attempting to do here in Portland in the great state of Oregon.
Yeah. Yay.
Yeah. Doing our best anyway, one day at a time.
Yeah, and we're here talking
It's
about
always
the real
one day
shit.
at a time, right?
It's been going really well so far, so.
Awesome. So I met Brian the other day. We went to
Saturday.
It was Saturday. Yeah, we went and saw you at the Portland Psychedelic Society's conference that they were having.
Yeah.
And that was where we met, and we were brought awareness to what you're doing. So, Brian, before we get started in what you're doing, tell us a little bit. You just moved to Portland?
Yeah, so I moved to Portland about a year and a half ago from San Diego, California.
Are you freezing?
A little bit. I'm getting used to it though. No, I made the decision this year that so in San Diego, it only rains 25 or 30 days out of the year. So anytime it rains, the whole city shuts down and everybody's in a justifiably bad mood. And I always to be I didn't fucking vote for this. Nobody voted for this. This is terrible. And we'll just wait it out. And now whenever it rains in Portland, I'm oh shit, I did vote for this. I moved here. I made the choice to be here where it rains. But honestly, when you live in a place, there's two things about the place. There's the climate and then there's the culture. And I think from a climate standpoint, it's pretty hard to beat Southern California. But from a culture standpoint, it's pretty hard to beat Portland.
Yay.
It's our little city in the woods. Would you not agree?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little city in the woods, but it's also a little haven of culture and art and progressive thought and people who are really thinking about not just their place in the world, but the larger world as a whole and how they can make it better. And it's a really
Exactly.
It's very inspiring to be in a city like that, where that's the general energy, is that kind of positivity and grassroots sensibility where people are really pursuing their passion, not so that they can get rich, but so that they can make a living and do a thing they believe in. I think from that standpoint, this is a really good place to be.
I think a lot of people in Portland have the thought process of actually making a change personally, and then maybe in our city, and then some of us have a bigger vision of global.
Yeah.
So I think I agree with you. I think it's a great place to be for the culture.
Yeah. And anytime you're making global change, you know what I mean? You have to start from a base. You have to
grassroots,
start from,
right?
Yeah, exactly. You have to start from a small network of support where, you have people that you can count on. And one of the only ways to really build actual popular support is to figure out what it is people want and then go fight for it. You know what I mean? And lead from the front on the edge of what's possible as far as shifting our law and politics in a way that is going to actually benefit average people instead of just the folks at the top. And when we're talking about decriminalization, this is a way to take power out of the hands of the police and the prison industrial complex and put the power back in the hands of people who have used psychedelic medicines for thousands of years, whether that's indigenous folks or otherwise. The reality is that these plant medicines have been used for a long, long time by a lot of different
But it's very
cultures.
sacred, very ceremonial, you know, and so I don't think they really want everybody to know about it too. Like ayahuasca.
Well, there is big pharma that has a lot of lobbyists and a lot of power in this country, and then there's the insurance people that pay for all of our prescriptions in big pharma too. So there's huge corporate presence in keeping some of these things tamped down because it does not profit them in the way that they are used to making money. So
yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, these any under capitalism, every business exists to make a return on investment. And when we're talking about natural psychedelic plants, like there's not a patent that you can get on a natural plant. You know what I mean? Because just like you can't patent lettuce, you can't patent psilocybin mushrooms. And that represents like not just that unpatentability of the commodity represents a threat to these big firms, but like so does the whole healing modality of psychedelics, whereas opposed to a pill that you take every single day for the rest of your life or for the next 6 months to a year.
With side effects.
With dramatic side effects that are longer than the advertisement for the pill itself.
A lot of people will not go on antidepressants because it kills their sexual drive. They're like, yeah, I got no worries, man. But I don't want to fuck anything.
Yeah.
It's not worth it.
Yeah. Well,
I'm telling you, that is a very real thing. Like that is a very valid
side
thing.
Effects. Yeah. Well,
that is one of the biggest side effects actually with antidepressants like Prozac, which is, one of the numero unos, So
Well, and sexual identity is so like
people.
tied up into people's like mental health and well-being. Like that is a really serious side effect. I want to be like really clear that like pharmaceutical medication and therapy have helped a lot of people.
Yes.
But it's clear at the same time that they have also failed a lot of people when like in spite of the revolutions that we've made in mental health pharmaceuticals, like we're still at a peak in the suicide rate in the United States. Major cities across the country, whether that's LA, Portland, Oakland, Chicago, New York, they're all in the middle of spikes in their fucking homelessness and mental health crises. Because we are one of the only developed countries that does not have universal health care, we are also one of the ones that criminalizes people for being non-functionally mentally ill. Whereas if you're having like an emotional breakdown in the middle of the Fred Meyer in Spain, they have a place to take, like hospital to take you with mental health professionals where they don't treat you like you're a criminal. They treat you like someone who's unwell. In the United States, you're disturbing the peace and you're a criminal and you get sent to jail. And that's not.
Well, not as much in Portland.
Yeah, it depends. It depends on the city.
I think other places are actually
your,
shipping homeless people here.
It depends on the city. It depends on your income level. It depends on the color of your skin. Like there's a lot of things that go into incidents. And I think my general point is that like when we're looking at big pharma's like incentive in the situation, like one of my favorite economists says that we live in the age of monopoly capitalism, where we're like, we have 3 telephone companies. We have 2 internet search companies. We have 4 computer companies. We have 3 oil companies. Like we're trending more and more towards monopoly. And that's why we have like 4 pharmaceutical companies, health insurance companies. And in the age of monopoly, like they're not here to take care of people. They're here to make dramatic shareholder return. And when they have enough excess capital to like buy our politicians by being the ones who fund their reelection campaigns, we need alternatives, not just to their healing modality, but to the whole capitalist mode of thinking of my profit's the only thing that fucking matters. When if you're a healthcare company, the thing that should actually matter is people's health and whether or not they're getting better. Like if you're a medicine company, your measure of success should not be how much the fucking stock went up in Q3. Your measure of success should be how many people have been healed by your medicine. And that's like a modality that's fundamentally opposed to any for-profit business, which is why, and any corporate fund, and by extension, any corporate funded campaign, which is why we're so focused on decriminalization before legalization and why we're so focused on being grassroots funded. You know what I mean? Because that's how authentic change has to happen, in our opinion.
So a little bit about that. So you guys are trying to help the people that are in jail right now that have been put there because of like mushrooms or weed.
So that's all nature based. So amnesty for the people who are currently in prison is one of our longer term goals. What we're focused on right now specifically is decriminalization of possession and home growing, so that people who are...
So there's a a line. It's
Yeah.
It's not like if you're bringing a lot of stuff in over the border. And
Yeah, exactly. So basically
with the
language.
cartel.
Yeah, so basically the language of our initiative says that the city of Portland shall make no law enforcing cracking down on possession, home growing, or transactions valued at under $500 a week. So if you're like growing mushrooms in your house and selling to your friends, and it's like, they pay you $50 a week for mushrooms, like that's not something to go, because $500 a week, if you break it down over the year, it's less than $24,000 a year. It's less than minimum wage. And if you're making less than minimum wage as a mushroom grower, I don't think the government has any business looking at you like you're some sort of like mushroom or drug baron. You know what I mean? You're a medicinal provider who's being compensated for the labor value that goes into the creation of a plant medicine, just like any other crop that has to be grown. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I have a question or a thought. So just the language of changing it from drug to medicine, I think that is so key in where we're at with the psychedelics right now, because they've had this bad rep of being, a party drug or a trip drug, or and of course negative press always gets more than positive press, right? So bad trips get more attention than the spiritual realization that actually happens through these medicines when they're treated as a medicine.
Yeah. One of the quotes on our sign, like we have a quote on our sign from Carlos Santana that talks about, basically it says, anything that harms you or holds you back is a drug, and anything that liberates you is a medicine.
Amen, Carlos.
Yeah. He's a wise man. You know what I mean?
Right.
And, I think that's really true. I think that, people 100 years ago used to talk about like the spiritual benefits of smoking opium. And I think that there's a lot of there's a dialectical process between like the medicine itself and how you interpret and experience those medicines. And I think anything can end up being a drug that's numbing you and holding you back from your potential. And I think that there are a lot of things that can be medicines that are actually liberating you and helping you move forward and grow as a person.
Legal things.
Yeah.
Alcohol. Let's blame it on the alcohol.
Blame it on the booze.
Right? I mean, how many Americans use that every night? They come home, they need a drink or two just to maybe get through the door.
Yeah.
And then get to the numbing TV programs that they watch every night in their Groundhog Day life.
The white picket fence.
Right.
That one
But that's legal because the lobbyists have made it legal. Nicotine is legal because the lobbyists and their corporations behind them have produced some sort of revenue that benefits others.
Yeah. And then they use the excess revenue to pay for politicians who are going to vote their way. Like
those are the others I was talking about.
Yeah. You want to talk about the age of monopoly capital? Like there are 3 tobacco companies. You know what I mean? There's RJ Reynolds.
Well, and they own multiple companies.
Oh, yeah. And it's like, they have all these brands.
They have the money that they need in a lot of different avenues.
Exactly.
If we just cut tobacco out, everybody would be super pissy for a couple of months. But you know what? We would adapt.
Yeah.
If we went to the grocery store and they just didn't have bags anymore, you would adapt.
Yeah.
They did adapt in California.
Yeah, we did.
Well, they still have paper though.
Yeah.
I was living in California and they still have paper bags. So I think that if they just completely took away the bags, we could use that for other things, Anyway, we'll sidetrack.
Yeah, no worries. I mean, I think a lot of our choices are more structural than they are individual, where it's very easy to go along with the options presented to you and not question the systems that create the options before you get the choice. You know what I mean? It's a lot. It's one thing when you're in your doctor's office and your doctor's like, oh, okay, hey, you should try this pharmaceutical. It's another thing when you realize, hey, the reason your doctor's prescribing that is because the pharmaceutical rep from the company signed a deal with him and his firm where he gets a certain percentage if they move a certain number of pharmaceuticals. And it's like, well, wait, so his personal financial incentive is in prescribing more of these medications. Like, how is that not a perversion of the Hippocratic Oath and a conflict of interest, you know? And that's why we want to move for decriminalization and not legalization and not licensing. So that way we can put power in the hands of people on the ground who are here to look at this not as a profit motive, but as a modality and a medicine for community building. You know what I mean?
I love that, community building.
So you guys are trying to pass a new law?
Yeah, so we just submitted the language last week to the city of Portland, which is going to change the city charter, which is like the constitution of the city of Portland, so that the city will no longer be spending money on through the police or through the district attorney on charging folks with possession or home growing of all psychedelic plant medicines. So not just mushrooms, but ayahuasca and other DMT-containing plants, the mescaline cacti, iboga, which is like a West African psychedelic root that they've used in healing for 12,000 years and has some unprecedented successes in addiction trials. And then bufetenin, which is an organic DMT analog that's found in several plants and organisms.
So just to be clear, this is just for the city of Portland. It's not for the state of Oregon.
Yeah, so we're starting in the city of Portland because, and there are allied groups to us out of like Decriminalized Nature Eugene, and there's a group working in Decriminalized Nature Ashland as well. So there are other grassroots groups who are working on this across the state. We are the furthest along and have raised the most money so far.
So you say grassroots. Tell us a little bit about your experience going through this.
Yeah.
How did it all start for you?
Being grassroots or...
your business, your idea, why
so
you are this passionate about doing
bringing
this.
it up from San Diego to Portland.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a
little bit about your story.
Yeah, so my story. So I moved up here about a year and a half ago because one of my friends... So I've spent the last 11 years of my life in face-to-face and public outreach and nonprofit politics. I started out working for Greenpeace as a face-to-face outreach person, doing fundraising for them because I'm a big believer in the environmental movement, the protection of endangered species, and fighting against climate change. One of the things that I found the most inspiring about Greenpeace is that they don't take any corporate donations or money from any government, so they can be independent and member funded. At the same time, because Greenpeace is not unionized, because they are not a cooperative structure, they're part of what you can call the nonprofit industrial complex, where there's an unelected board of directors who pick the CEO. And the people who do the management and the campaigning are in a fundamentally different pay level, class position, and amount of pressure that they're under, where the people who are doing the fundraising and raising 90% of the money are in charge of 0% of the decisions and are the only ones under like a job quota where if they don't raise enough money, they get fired in 2 weeks. And I did not think it was right for progressive nonprofits to be what, in my opinion, is exploiting their fundraisers. So I wanted to branch out and do something independent. So I spent 5 years in San Diego running a grassroots funded nonprofit that gave preventative grants to veteran families on the edge of ending up homeless. We kept 19 families, including 11 kids, from ending up on the streets.
How old are you?
God
If you don't mind me
I just turned 31.
Awesome.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Yay, on your journey.
Well, that's the nice thing about being Asian is, you know what I mean? Is I could be a very weathered looking 23 or a very good looking 45. And it's very hard to tell.
You're funny, Brian.
Yeah, I do my best.
That's awesome.
So after that, I ran as an independent for the House of Representatives in San Diego, and lost. Obviously, that's why I'm not in Congress right now. And after, so I came in 5th out of the 7 people running, raised like $43,000 for an independent campaign, which was very cool. And then after I lost, one of my good friends from Greenpeace was like, I'm up in Portland. I know these two psychotherapists who are working on a therapy and decriminalization bill. Do you want to come up here and help build their outreach campaign? So I moved up here. I spent about 3 months working on the Psy 2020 campaign.
I was just going to ask.
We're supporting that.
Yeah. So I have a lot of respect for like the therapy model and like the idea that there needs to be good, strong regulation. At the same time, like my experience working there, it was very clear that there was like a very sharp philosophical and class divide between my buddy and I and Tom and Cherie Eckert. I think that they are good people who are trying to do the best who are trying to do the thing that they think is right. They are open to taking corporate donations, and I think that that is something that we should be, as a movement, be avoiding on principle, even from good corporations. And, Cherie is a delightful person who's been, the vice president of a marketing division in her past, who had managed hundreds of people before, and I always found her to be really visionary, very compassionate, very communicative, and very easy to work with. Her husband, Tom, did not have the same level of respect for face-to-face outreach. And I'm pretty good at working with people who are sometimes disrespectful. My buddy Chris is not. And he and Tom butted heads. And at one point, basically they fired Chris after I had been up here for like 2 months. But in the state of Oregon, anyone who's a citizen can start a political action committee in support or opposition of any bill, candidate, or party. So after they fired Chris, I was like, we should just start a political action committee in support of their initiative. We can tell people to go out and vote for it, but we can do it from the grassroots. And if there are opportunities to do more than what they're doing, or if the donations they're taking cause them to change course, we can be ready and have a power base. He ended up doing his own thing and leaving the organization, but we grew to a staff of about 7. And while we were working in support of the Psy 2020 initiative, the folks down in Oakland, out of Decriminalize Nature Oakland, won their city council resolution in May, and they were the first city in the country to decriminalize all the natural psychedelic plants.
Wow.
So we were like, why should we should be operating at the limits of what is possible and the farthest extent of what people are ready for and want, you know what I mean? Because as a grassroots group, like, you have to stay relevant to, when you're not taking any corporate donations or money from any political parties, you have to stay relevant to what people want. And moving towards the cutting edge of the possible was really important to us. So we hired a lawyer to write a citywide initiative with some of the money that we had, and pivoted to Decriminalize Nature and working on that. And we just, like I said, we just filed the language last week. And yeah, it turned out to be a really good decision, because in July, the Psy 2020 campaign decided to pivot on their initiative and submit new language. So after all the signatures they gathered and all the money they raised, they switched from their original initiative, which is the one that I had helped them work on, to IP34, where they got rid of all of their decriminalization and penalty reduction stuff, made it explicitly illegal to possess psilocybin outside of the therapy model, and made it illegal for the psilocybin produced for therapy to be grown outdoors. And one of their big funders, it turns out, has a patent on indoor mushroom growing technology. And it's not hard to draw the dots between the people funding their campaign and the choices and the changes that they've made to their initiative. At the end of the day, I still think it's very important for people to vote for a therapy model. I still think that it's very important for there to be a therapy model, because the reality is that psychedelic therapy is clinically proven to treat a variety of mental health issues.
I agree.
But there should not be, we cannot put licensing before liberty. We cannot put profit before people. We need to focus on decriminalization before we are handing over the keys of the psychedelic kingdom to a series of white collar professionals, when there are people who have been working in the underground community for the last 50 years under the war on drugs, doing underground facilitation, doing underground production, and they have been healing people outside of a therapy modality. And I don't think it's fair or right to treat those people as criminals. And I know that Tom and Cherie, when you actually look at their original language of their initiative, don't think it's right either. And I think it's really unfortunate that they chose to have the change of heart and direction that they did.
I wonder why that happened.
But that's also, I mean, we can...
So do they have to get new signatures?
Yep, they
now?
have to start all. Yeah, they have to start all over again as of late July. Yeah, and they were not good about.
Do you know how many signatures they had?
Yeah, 130 something thousand.
Wow.
Yeah, because and I don't. It's they're not. They were not good about communicating this to their supporters and the people who have given them money in the past. They just had to refund $4,000 to some lady in September. So. That's part of why it's really important to stick to your principles and to stick to the original thing that you get people excited about and to not fundamentally change direction. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But at the same time, it's not going to do the psychedelic movement any good if we're all sitting here throwing arrows at each other. It's just important to make sure that everybody's voting for all the things, because at this point they're going to need to complement each other, because we can't have just therapy.
That's great.
You know what I mean?
So I have a question. Do you know what's going on in Denver? So because I don't, so I'm hoping you do and can maybe enlighten me. So
we've actually been asked that too by somebody. Yeah.
Right. So is what's going on in Denver closer to what you're pursuing right now versus the new language of Psy 2020, and maybe elaborate on that a bit.
That's a really good question. So yes, what we're doing is much closer to the model that they pulled off in Denver. I've been in contact with Kevin Matthews, who is the guy who ran Decrim Denver, because just like we're working to do, they got it on the ballot and won a people's vote, which is incredibly powerful. Because anytime you take language...
Colorado.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And anytime you take ballot language to the people and they vote for a thing. Yeah, absolutely. Good job, Denver. It's really, really powerful, because it shows that it's not just, the government in its suits making decisions. It's it's not just the government in its suits making decisions. It's the people on the ground, leading from the front. So since they have won, Kevin started a group called Spore, which is Kevin Matthews is the guy who runs Decriminalize Denver.
Okay.
And what they're doing, so what they're doing is much more akin to what we're doing, in the sense that it was decriminalization of possession. Important caveat, they did just mushrooms. And we in Oakland are working on all of the psychedelic plant medicines that are Schedule 1D. But they won about 6 months ago. They've been doing educational work, and then Kevin founded a group called Spore, which is like a lobbying, outreach, and education nonprofit designed to spread the psychedelic movement all over the country. So they've been...
I love that. It's so appropriate. Spore.
Yeah, isn't that great?
I mean, that is just going to spread.
Yeah, and he's doing, so Kevin's been involved, Kevin's involved in kind of spreading the movement around. He just took 2 positions with 2 different psilocybin investment companies, and his goal in them is to try to steer them in a progressive and positive direction. I personally am inherently skeptical of for-profit businesses' ability to actually be steered in a positive direction. But, again, it's hard to argue with success when they're the first city in the country to decriminalize. But what they did is much more akin to what we're doing than the therapy model that Psy 2020 is doing.
So in Colorado and Denver, it's not the therapy model then. It's just you can possess whatever their language is, so many grams, and you can grow so many.
It's like having one, it's like the same restriction as pot, you can grow your own pot.
Yeah.
And maybe hook your cousin up.
Yeah, absolutely. Pot before there were dispensaries, you know what I mean? When it was like medical weed, where it was like where you weren't really going to go to jail anymore, unless you were selling a whole bunch. And that's kind of exactly what decriminalization is all about, is making sure this doesn't become a commodity and fully legalized, but at the same time, making sure we're not stuck in a 1971 Nixonian model of locking people up for plants that grow in the ground.
Yeah, I think that the whole psychedelic thing is amazing. I'm 42.
You pull it off well.
Oh, thank you. I was a Jehovah's Witness growing up, and so I was very innocent. I thought I was going to live forever on Paradise Earth, dance with Gene Kelly and Fred Astaire. And when I was about 22, I think I smoked weed and a little bit, and then I started having, I had some psychedelic experiences. I don't know what it was about me, but I was very calm. I was always the mom of the group. Everybody was cool if I was there. I never made a big scene.
Yeah.
It was good. But when I went through my first divorce, I would say I was 28. I had more psychedelic experiences because when you're leaving a religion like Jehovah's Witnesses, you're accepting death for the first time in your life. So that's what and so all of these things that they tell you about masturbating, about holidays,
about birthdays,
that's included.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I had my first birthday party, which I still have birthday parties.
Because you got cheated. You got cheated out of 28 years of them.
I had drag queens at my last one. It was amazing.
On the beach. Woo.
Yeah, you'll have to come to our next one. But, these moments, so I was a DJ for 22 years, and I'm not a DJ anymore. My husband's a music producer. He makes beautiful music. Music is ever present in our world. And I remember having this mushroom trip this really impacted my life. This was a huge, huge moment for me. And I have, when you get the information, your life completely changes. You choose to either accept that information, and then you just have to behave a certain way because now you have that information, or you don't. So that night, I remember my friend, we were walking down the street in Santa Monica, and it was so crazy, guys. I swear to God, there were 2 raccoons climbing up this palm tree. They were so cute. And it was like little bears in the tree, which is such a random, weird place to see raccoons. Mm-hmm. But after that, she just stops me in the middle of the street, and she turns and she looked at me and she goes, "Naomi, you are a conduit. You are music. You are a physical form of music." And I've always felt like I was a conduit of music. I've always been able to share a piece of music to you to expand your mind. Like psychedelics, right? There's always a piece of music that I can expand your mind just a tad. So I accepted death for the first time, and it was just such a crazy, profound, I was free. I mean, this was the first time I was free because I went through my divorce, and my son was with my husband. And because I was a young mom, I had my son when I was 20. I had my life backwards. So the next day I wake up from this mushroom trip, guys. So I'm sober at this point. I had sleep, and I was going to the bathroom, and I opened up this book that he had in the bathroom that was like Creative Mind. There's something about the creative mind. And I just opened it up, and it was talking about being aware and slowing your pace down. It was like, instead of being in such a goddamn hurry through life, it's like if you get to a 4-way stop sign, right? And you got there first, and then the car that got there after you goes right in front of you, right? You're like, fuck you, right? It's talking about going, wow, if that made you feel better doing that, I take it back. I said it out loud. This actually happened to me. I said it out loud. I was like, I take it back. You just kind of let things go a little bit, accept things. You slow your pace. You notice the falcon that happens to be perched somewhere, or the homeless person that is sitting there smiling today. It's all of these things. It's like slow your pace down. And I would never have learned some of these big life lessons had it not been for these psychedelic experiences with the people that I loved around me.
Yeah.
It really changed my life because I didn't know anything. And then my mind is open to this world that is different dimensions.
Yeah.
Well, that's what the psychedelic therapy is showing in their studies. I mean, it's like macrodosing in a controlled environment, set and setting. I mean, the set and setting is important. It's important to have a guide. It's important to know what you're going into. There's always maybe an element of fear the first time.
Well, that's why you want to do it around somebody who's experienced and
right. That's why there's a guide. That's why there's a guide. That's why there's a guide.
Very important.
But of the documentaries that I've watched and the books that I've listened to, because I don't read them, I don't have time, I listen. But that's an auditory learning experience for me. Everything that I've been studying over the last 4 to 6 months is exactly what you're saying. It's that those experiences open a person up to something greater than them. Cancer patients, Cancer patients do not fear death because they know that there's something greater than them out there. There are so many benefits to these medicines that have been held back from us. It's so frustrating. I think that's almost criminal, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's like when you deprive people of medicine that could save their lives, it absolutely feels like it should be a crime. You know what I mean? And just when you hear about people's life-changing, beautiful experiences, like especially when decades later, their psychedelic experiences are some of the most important spiritual moments and like personal development moments of their lives. Like, how is this a crime?
Don't you think that we should get to a time with society where your first mushroom or ayahuasca or whatever trip or psychedelic experience should be with your mother and father? Like, honestly, don't you think we should get to a time where, because it is a spiritual moment, but
or the
maybe
tribe.
the generation after
or
us.
or the tribe, or somebody somebody in the tribe that is trusted.
In each place that we live, we should be able to have this moment. Because, Aborigine kids, they go on their walkabout at like 14 to become a man. We talk about tribes. We watched, Lori and I went to a film the other night on ayahuasca, which was really cool.
Called The Medicine.
Yeah, The Medicine. Highly recommend looking that up. It's a good... I've never heard the story of what it was really like to go through an ayahuasca experience, and we learned a lot. They did leave the part out that you shit yourself, but
potentially,
not everyone.
Anyways, but to go back to what you guys are doing, I think that bigger picture, wouldn't it be a beautiful world if these constricting laws were not in place to where we can't enjoy the medicine from the planet?
No. Well, one of the things that capitalism does is like it atomizes people, and like it tells you that your mental health is a thing that's up to you, that your development is up to you, as opposed to, there's and I think that bringing those things back into a communal process can be a really empowering and really useful paradigm, because the reality is that in spite of the ways that we're made to feel that we're alone and isolated, we're absolutely not. Like, every single thing in front of us was made by hundreds of people. Like the fact that we're here with microphones, like these metals were mined in another country and transported here by people from another country and brought over here on boats.
All of these things were a thought at some point in time. A thought,
and then their human action. Like, this is a whole chain of other people made this reality for us, and it's very easy to get stuck in this alienated and isolated pattern or default mode network of I'm just me. And the reality is that like every single commodity around us is the product of a large web of a mycelial network of social relationships and production relationships that build our reality. And the more that we can have medicines that make us conscious of that, the better off our entire society is going to be.
Well, some of the things that have even come into our existence, some of these scientists and entrepreneurs are now confessing their, quote, sins, I guess, of using psychedelics. Steve Jobs is one of them.
Confessing their sins? Is that what you said?
I mean, that's what it sounds
wow.
like. Because I grew up Catholic, so that's how it is.
I just confessed my sin.
Right. But now they're coming out and they're telling the stories of their LSD or their psychedelic experience that helped them see this. The double helix of DNA came from a psychedelic experience.
Because of the way their minds work.
Exactly.
Awesome.
And the last book that I listened to had person after person after person that was like, this came to me through a psychedelic experience. And I can't name them all right now. Maybe on a later podcast, I'll be more prepared with the list of the names and the things that came about. But psychedelics have been part of our existence. And
before our existence, I would say.
Before our existence, but it's been part of our technology.
Yeah.
That has moved this civilization to where it is right now. And it wouldn't be where it is without psychedelics. And
connected the dots.
Right. Yeah. And that's what so many people just don't even know. They don't have that understanding that, LSD, psilocybin gave you the technology of the phone that you're talking on, people, right? And some of the music that you're listening to.
Well, and also like what I was saying, so Catholic, I was talking about Jehovah's Witnesses. Apparently it is, we have to like overcome some pretty big stuff.
Programs.
Like real shit.
People.
We got to go through some real shit to make these realizations, to have these experiences, to go, whoa, to be open to receiving it, to set your fear aside. That's a big part of it.
Being open, you just said
Do you have an experience? Have you done mushrooms ever?
Yeah. So, no, never once. No, never once. I dedicated my life.
Are we just talking to some bullshit? Or
no, I dedicated my life to the self, and I've never done them before. So honestly, I didn't, psychedelics were a very transformative part of my life and realizing what you could call the dialectical nature of reality. So there's the two systems of logic, right? One of them developed by Immanuel Kant, like the concept of empiricism, like a thing is just a thing. And by looking at a thing in isolation outside of biases, you're going to get a better understanding of the thing. And then there's the dialectical mode of logic developed by George Hegel, which is basically like a thing is not just a thing. Everything is made up of a web of relationships and mutually exclusive but interconnected tendencies. You know what I mean? Like gender itself is like locked in this contradiction of male and female, or man and woman, masculine and feminine.
But in the old tribes, that was not the case.
Yeah, and they're
they recognized many versions of themselves.
In the old tribes, it was what you would call a non-antagonistic contradiction, right? Where there's a difference between male and female, but there's no value judgments or negativity associated with being on that spectrum. The synthesis of the spectrum is very fluid and very open. And over time, what you develop is like this empirical understanding of gender of, no, there's men and women, and if you're outside of that binary, you're doing it wrong, you know? And over time, the empirical logic and empirical systems that have come to dominate reality find themselves undermined more and more. And it was one of my psychedelic experiences in college combined with some...
college. I heard about that.
Combined with some reading of a Zen philosopher named Miyamoto Musashi, who talks about... he was a swordsman from the 1600s who wrote this whole book about the Zen art of sword fighting. And he says that the point of any art form, whether it's painting, whether it's sword fighting, whether it's being a general or calligraphy, he says the point of the art is to lose yourself and your preconceived notions and become the spirit of the thing. He says, if anything is anything, then everything is everything.
Amen.
So if you really want to be a great swordsman, then you should study the guitar. And if you really want to be a great general, then you should learn calligraphy.
Oh, I like that.
Because the point is not, war is one thing and calligraphy is another thing. It's that you're sitting down studying an art form, trying to abandon your preconceived notions about how the art form is supposed to be done, so you can shut your fucking ego up and learn how to do the thing the way the thing is supposed to be done and the way the thing is done most efficiently. And it was a combination, fluidly. And it was a combination of like a psilocybin and an LSD experience that was like, once you physically feel the dialectical nature of reality and you're forced to, it's hard to go back to an understanding of things as isolated, because you realize that everything is inherently interconnected, past, present, and future.
Have you ever had a DMT experience? I will admit that I have.
Yeah, I was gonna say I've definitely had a DMT experience.
I have not crossed over because I can't get past the harshness on my lungs. I have sensitive lungs. But I'm pretty. I hear the stories. I understand. I feel like I've been to the light, so I'm good. But eventually I will get through that. But
you are the lightning.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You don't have to go there. You are there.
I do feel that I know what they're talking about. And just because I existed in this way every day. But have you? I mean, DMT is that is definitely a very ceremonial thing. You want to set the stage for that for sure.
Yeah.
You want to get it from a safe place. You want to have somebody there to help guide you, be with you. You don't want to put bad things into your body. You don't want to have a beer. You just like eat a salad that day.
Yeah.
And you really want to meditate into that place. And so just for you folks out there, really, it's like with any like ayahuasca or with anything, you really need to be safe, because right now that's not legal.
It absolutely is not. You have to be careful about where you're getting it from. You have to be
very, very careful. Just be very careful. And let's not fuck it up for the new possibilities.
Yeah.
For opening up doors so that we can have these spiritual experiences instead of it being an underground drug that we're going to do this weekend, at a Kager.
Yeah.
Let's stop doing those types of things so that we don't fuck it up for everybody else.
So moving from DMT, which is naturally present in us and
it secretes in our body.
It's present in the universe and in the planet we live on. Ayahuasca. So ayahuasca is part of what you're trying to protect.
So what we're going to decriminalize are all the DMT containing plants. The popular name of like the brew of the vine that contains the DMT and the other herbs and stuff is called ayahuasca. But it's like the commonly known as name of all of the DMT containing plants, and that's what we're working to protect. Because dimethyltryptamine is one of the most powerful psychoactive compound as far as interaction with the human brain.
So potentially, if this bill passes, there can be a legal ayahuasca ceremony in Portland.
As long as it's done. Not for profit, and as long as it's conducted safely.
So she's in the medical field. So she would be able to do it at a ceremony to have that experience, having the job that she does.
Yeah, and
is that what would be able to happen, or is that a separate thing with medical people?
So that's what decriminalization is all about: is making sure that there's no crime for possessing or homegrowing. And the reality is that it's not any more, if the possession and use is decriminalized, it's not any more or less legal than doing therapy on your own time at your own home. And the reality is that the kind of people that are going to get themselves into using ayahuasca for therapy or DMT for therapy are going to be the kinds of people who want to use it for therapy and believe that it should be, and they're going to look into using it. Because again, what we're talking about here is cracking down on the sale and distribution of the plant, not cracking down on small scale distribution for personal use. You know what I mean?
So just something that came to my mind right now with you saying that is some of these plants have, the psychedelic experience, set and setting is so vital to having a spiritual or a growth or personal growth experience, which
you don't want to be doing DMT on the streets.
Right. and that's where I'm going here. So if this bill passes, like what's the next step to protect people from not having a quote bad trip or having a bad experience?
How do we expect those few to fuck it up for everyone else?
How do we prepare some people in this city to be proper guides and proper distributors of these things that can really be helpful to some people, but a bad trip could be very, very harmful.
Sure.
And we need to make sure that people are safe in their own psyche.
Yeah.
That's a great question.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So what they did down in Oakland and what they're doing in Denver is they're setting up 501c3 educational nonprofits that are working to do harm reduction and education around the medicine. So that way they can establish standards and baseline education for people in those communities, because the reality is that these are very powerful medicines.
Yes.
And you do not just want people to walk into it without an understanding of what they're doing. And
Exactly.
They're not party. They're not
It's
party
not a party
drugs.
drug.
It's not a
Exactly.
party drug.
And the problem
It's
is
a
that
medicine.
it
really is.
And the problem that we have right now is that all of those things are currently happening, but they're happening under the veil of secrecy. Because if you take mushrooms and you're having a bad time, you don't want to fucking call 911 and be like, "Hey, bro, I'm having a bad time on mushrooms," because they're like, "That's a crime. You're going to jail." They're not going to be like, "Oh, you're having a bad trip. Let me connect you to the county trip Let me connect you to the county trip sitters so they can talk you what you're going through." And then someone who can be like, "Well, how many mushrooms did you have?" Like, we'll take a deep breath and focus on the things around you. Remember that you took a substance and that this will end and that this is not a thing that's going to last forever.
Right.
See, exactly, right? And that's why
and let me hold your hand. And
Mama.
what are you experiencing right now? And guess what? There's a lesson. So let's look for the lesson.
And that's not
what is the lesson.
Yeah, and all of the dangers of people having a bad time or misusing them are present right now.
Exactly.
Decriminalization is going to reduce the potential harm of misuse, because we're going to have a legal, above ground community who is dedicated their lives to making sure that there's education and safe access to these medicines, which is not something that's occurring right now. And as soon as we pass a decriminalization, we can start to move to, just like they've done in Oakland and Denver, move towards the nonprofit educational model. Because the unfortunate reality is that anytime there's a psychoactive substance, some people are going to misuse it. And just like, I meet people every day on the street who are like, "Well, if we decriminalize mushrooms, aren't people going to drive on mushrooms?" And I'm like, I mean, the people who drive on mushrooms, right, who are going to drive on mushrooms if we decriminalize, they're driving on mushrooms right now. They don't give a shit if they're legal or not, because if you're dumb enough to drive on mushrooms, you're going to do it anyway. Like alcohol's legal, and people drive drunk all the time. Like it's not And when we had prohibition, people drove drunk under prohibition. It was just driven underground.
When we had prohibition, there was more alcohol consumed than there was when there was out prohibition.
Exactly. And the fact of the matter is prohibition
and the war
doesn't
on
benefit
drugs
anyone.
has increased the use of drugs in America and other countries.
Yeah. And exactly.
The fact of the matter is it's growing right outside. It's growing next to the parking lot. It's in the forest. Yeah. This is something that nature has provided for us. And, we talk about climate change. We talk about the planet. I'm a very passionate person about protecting our planet and the sea, the ocean. Yeah. But fungus and ayahuasca and all of these plant-based materials, we hear stories like they're legends, of the walkabouts or your spirit, when you go and meet your spirit animal and it's growth is what it represents when we hear the stories, right? It represents growth. And I will admit it as well that, my son is 22 now, but I did guide him through a psychedelic mushroom experience very little when he was like 17, I want to say 16, 17.
Wow.
And it opened that door for him and I, and it was a beautiful thing. It was a great moment. And now he's extremely safe about it.
Yeah.
He's not, he respects it because I taught him to respect the medicine because that's what it is. And, the kid also has a bunch of people that his friends are all way older than he. It's like really, but that's who he's relating to because his mind and heart has been expanded. He still has his moments when he acts like he's 22.
Sure.
Love you, Journey. But I really do think that it's important to have these experiences. It's the medicine. We've got to be able to respect it, but it comes from Mother Earth. It comes from nature, and it's some bullshit if you're going to jail for doing that, for picking it.
I think in my studies and in my journey over the last 2 years in particular, I have come to learn about people like Joe Dispenza, who is really into meditation and how you can change your life through meditation, which thank you, Dr. Joe Dispenza, because you've changed my life in that direction. And I believe that we are coming to a point in our civilization where all of these things are coming to the surface for a reason. And I think that reason is to open our consciousness, to change this planet, to connect with each other in the way that we were
meant to
be connected.
Yes.
And I feel almost blessed to be alive at this point in time and be on my personal journey.
And doing the real shit.
Yeah.
Because doing the real shit,
right?
We've had an opportunity to make these connections with
Right.
people, and it's beautiful.
Right. And this is part of the process. It's like you came into our life. She came into my life through a dog. I mean, there's the whole story there.
Dogs are better than people. Let's be real. No offense to all the humans out there. I love you, Mom, but dogs are better than people.
But we're coming to a point where there's this social consciousness and individual consciousness coming together all at the same time. And to me, I feel blessed, like I'm living in this moment in time, because I think we're on a rocket launch pad of just blowing everything up, and everything is going to change for the better.
Oh yeah, shit's changing.
Right.
They can't stop it. I think,
it's
eventually.
changing. Things are moving. Cannabis is legal now. Psychedelics are going to become legal. And once people can really get a hold of psychedelics and learn how to use them as a medicine or a spiritual practice, which includes, if from my study at least, after you do ayahuasca, after you have a psychedelic experience, there's work to do after that.
Oh, it's not just it's not an overnight thing.
To do after
it's not
that.
a one experience
and that's
thing.
meditation or self-reflection, hiking, whatever your work is after that. It's not just the mind-blowing experience that you have. It's what do you do with what you've learned?
What is to be done?
And how do you continue to grow after that? Yeah. So I'm excited.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a lot of like people are looking, like the reason why all these things are popping up right now is because we're at a crisis point in capitalism where it's caused a crisis in our environment where the system is
if we don't shift it, it's
well, I mean, the system is looked at. Capitalism looks at anything it can turn into a commodity. Whether that's, and it's like, that's great when we're talking about things like diamonds and Rolls Royces, but when we're talking about things like the ocean or national parks or human life, like
our own
fucking brains, like we're talking about a fundamentally destructive and dangerous modality where capitalism is creating all these problems in the climate and our mental health and our housing, because as long as housing's for profit and a commodity, it means, hey, if you can't afford housing, fuck you, you sleep on the streets. And as long as we have that, welcome to the socialist future, everybody.
We're going to change that. We're going to change it.
Yeah, but I think like people are looking for solutions, and I think psychedelics are part of the solution, because one of the things that capitalism does is it's an ideological system that says You have to work hard or you're worthless. You have to make profit or you're worthless. Shut up and do what your boss tells you or you're worthless. Don't fight back or you're worthless. The land is a commodity and you should pay for the land you live on or you're worthless. Water is a commodity and you should pay for the water you drink
soon.
or you're worthless. You know what I mean? And they're going to charge for it because, and it's like, we joke about that.
They won't pay any taxes.
You know, right? And it's like, we joke about that shit, but it's like,
just for air eventually.
if they could find a way to like, if it's like that Calvin and Hobbes thing. It's like if people could find a way to put butterflies in cages, they would, you know, and psychedelics are a solution to the lack of cognitive liberty, to the ideological training that capitalism gives you. And just like it can break through the default mode network in your own brain, it can break through the default mode network and the ideological conditioning that people have. So it's a really important tool to hold on to in a system that tells you that only things that are commodifiable are worthwhile.
Okay, I want to go woo-woo here for because I'm kind of itching to do that, and I'm being inspired to do that. So I meditate daily for like 50 minutes most days. I have my forgiveness days, but what I am feeling right now is whatever name you want to put on it, the universe, God,
the force,
right? The field, the source. I like to call it DL, divine love, because that's what it feels like to me. I really feel that divine love has been sitting patiently out there for a while and just letting us be the kids that we have been. And
the
teenagers, right? Letting
totally
us all be the teenagers. But it's getting tired of it. And now it's like, okay, I've given you all of these gifts on your planet, these natural gifts on your planet. And some people have known about, I've let people know about these gifts since the beginning of time, right? Yeah. Psychedelics have been on the earth since the beginning of time. And some human beings have known about it since the beginning of time. It's been squashed. It's been put in the closet. It's been put in caves. It's been hidden from conquistadors, you know. But now I think DL is saying, it's time, people. I'm ready for you to all come join me back. Come back to me and let me help you save this beautiful planet and save yourselves. And so that's woo-woo. That's where I'm at with that. But I really feel that there's something pulling all of us together right now. Yeah. Like, how did we connect? Yeah. Right?
Yeah, well, and I think whether, like, you know, you can call it woo-woo, but I think at the same time, like, I think all of those woo ideas come from a real concrete historical sense that we're on the point of a major fundamental shift, because like we had the financial crisis in 2008, and it's very clear that like as much as the system continues to wobble forward, like it doesn't have another decade in it at the rate it's going. And there's going to have to be a fundamental change. And I think people
people feel
that change before I think there's a feeling of that change before there's a sense of what it's going to be. So when you're like, I'm not sure what it is, but it's coming. Yeah. I think I don't think that that's a woo sentiment. I think that the woo part of it comes from not knowing how that change is going to come, but it's knowing that.
But that's why you're here tonight, because you're making that change.
Right. Well, I'm trying to shift all of reality just a little bit. You know what I mean?
But trusting in that change, and just in
revolution's going to come,
right? Somewhere there was a vision. And you've had to take action on that vision to get you to where you're at right now. And that takes balls, honestly. And it takes tenacity to keep knocking on doors and to keep getting up every day and getting out there and drawing people's attention to this cause. So
thank you.
Bravo. Thank you for doing what you're doing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's, you know, it comes down to like a faith in the people and a faith in the movement. You know what I mean? That a faith in the movement in the sense that like this is a thing that needs to happen at this historical conjuncture.
Amen.
And if they've won in one of the, like if they've won in Oakland, we can win in any major metropolitan city in America.
Well, Portland, I mean, if Denver did it, Portland's
If Denver
always
and Oakland did
they're
it, we
like
can
pretty
fucking
neck
do it.
and
Yeah,
neck with.
of course,
Right.
you know.
And then it's going to be Austin.
And then Seattle.
It's like,
All these
it's like
progressive
it's like a
cities.
faith in the movement, and then like also a faith in the people that if you stand on the street in front of the New Seasons on 33rd Street and you go, hey, we're decriminalizing mushrooms, do you have half a minute? That the average person's going to be like, sure, what are you doing? You know what I mean? And it takes a certain amount of faith to hit the street the first days, and after the first person's like, you know what, I'll give $25 to that, like it only takes one person to make it real.
Yeah.
Because as
Right.
soon as the first person's like, sure, kid, here's $20, like, good luck. It's like, oh, you pitched in $20 to make this real, so it has to be real now because you're counting on me.
Right.
And in the year that we've been doing this, we've had over 9,000 people donate to the campaign.
Great.
And it's that's the only reason.
With how many people out there on the streets doing it?
Yeah, so we're up to nine and one part-timer.
That's
so 9.5.
pretty good, guys.
Yeah, we're up to
Good job.
9.5 right now.
So what do you
Good.
need? What do you need to help make this campaign go forward? What can we do? What can Portland do? What can our listeners do to help you?
Well, thank you for asking. So there are three really big things that we're looking for. The first one is money, because like I said, we're 100% grassroots funded. We don't take any corporate donations or money from any political parties. In the 14 months that we've been around, we just broke $112,000 last week from our
Nice.
9,000th individual person. So if 100 people listening to this pitch in $20, that's $2,000 more dollars we have. Because it adds up quickly when everybody does a little bit. There's a quote from the Bible that goes, from each according to their ability to each according to their needs, from Acts. And that's kind of what it takes to win any movement, is from each according to their ability to each according to their need. So if people, so in addition to money, we need business endorsements. So if you are a small business owner or somebody, even if you're just like, I am a personal massage person who runs my own, and I'm my own independent contractor. We need small business endorsements because we need to put faces from the community on this to show that this is not just a thing for college students and hippies. This is something that like the average business owner and person, the average upstanding citizen in the city of Portland has a vested interest in and believes should happen. And then number three, in about 2 weeks, we're going to get the final draft of the signature sheets. So we are going to need volunteers to come knock on doors and get registered voters in the city of Portland to sign our petition so that this can get on the ballot for November 2020. So money, business endorsements,
Or
and
your time.
getting signatures. Those
Yeah.
are the three things we need. And if you can offer any of them, we would be extremely grateful.
I was a Jehovah's Witness growing up. I could probably knock on some doors.
You're a professional door knocker, one of the best.
So how do people get a hold of you, Brian?
So we are online at decriminalizenatureportland.org. We are on Facebook and Instagram as well. If you search Decriminalize Nature Portland, we respond. Yes. Oh, and we're on Twitter as well. We respond to any of our social media, or you can email us directly through the site. You can make donations directly through the website at decriminalizenatureportland.org.
And we'll post all of this up too.
I'm sure
by
all of
the
this will be
time
in the
the
comments.
podcast comes up, it'll probably be the same day, so that we can send out some links.
Cool.
Awesome. So, do you want to read us a little bit about what the bill exactly is? And what the number is, so we know what to look out for, and just in case
so
nobody has any time to do any of those things, and they go vote. And
so we have the links to the stuff on our website and social media. But the number, we are initiative number PDX01. We were the first
that's
one.
pretty easy.
Yeah, we were the first
Good
ones
job.
to file in
I'm
the
glad
city of
I
Portland for
asked.
2020, which makes it very easy.
Yeah.
But
like if you're in your commute right now, you can just put that in your brain, say it 3 times.
Yeah, but you can see the language that we submitted online. You can see the language we submitted on our
Right.
website. And if anybody has any questions, we'd be happy to message it to you as well.
That's awesome. Is there anything else that you would like to share with our listeners tonight?
I mean, honestly, no, other than to thank y'all so much for having us on and for giving us
It's
this
our
forum to
pleasure.
talk about what we're doing. Because the only reason that grassroots efforts succeed is because hundreds of people believe in what we're doing and help make it happen. And just, volunteering the space from your podcast is one of the things that helps. So thank you.
Well, we believe that we really need to support each other. I mean, life is very difficult out there, and we just don't need to make it harder on other people. Just check yourself before you go out the door, man. And today I actually had a bad attitude going out and driving, but I came home. I was like, nope, I'm just going to come home. I'm just going to do my things and snuggle my animals. I just am defeated today.
Yeah.
So, it happens. We're all human, but so thank you so much, Brian. It's our pleasure to have you. We'll definitely, maybe I'll be able to volunteer sometime. So we like to end our podcast with something that's happened to us this week, an experience, a lesson, an epiphany, funny moment, something that you just want to say. So we're going to start with Lori tonight.
All right. So just yesterday during my meditation, I came upon the word judgment, and my lesson was all about judgment. And I was sitting there in my space trying to clear my head, and Lego kept yapping at me like she does sometimes.
That's her ego.
That's my ego, Lori's
By
ego,
the way.
Lego. So I was just thinking about how sometimes I judge others and how I judge myself. And this voice came to me and said, and then I thought to myself, it's not my place to judge. It's divine love's. It's, the universe's place to judge. And I heard this distinct voice say, I do not judge. I just love. And I went, oh my God. I do not judge. I just love. And I love you and I love everybody else. And you need to stop judging everybody, and you need to stop judging yourself. Just love.
Yeah, I like that. Brian, do you have anything that's cool that's happened to you this week?
Yeah, well, I kind of want to build off of what you just said. So I was reading a book called History and Class Consciousness by a Hungarian philosopher named Georgi Lukács. And what he's talking about is the way in which people, he has this concept called reification, and he's talking about how people concretize their identity into things instead of concretizing their identity into their actions. So he talks about, and this is a guy who's writing in 1923,
right?
And he's talking about how he's talking about basically just the danger of separating yourself from your own actions and getting caught up in the commodities that you buy, where it's like, this shirt is me. These shoes are me. I'm a person who listens to this music instead of I'm a person who does X, Y, and Z. I'm a student. I'm an MMA fighter. I'm a singer. I'm a mother.
I have a song to play you when we're done.
Yeah. So I think that just, realizing the way that you reify yourself into the things around you, that's something that I've been working on and thinking about for the last 2 or 3 weeks. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
It's those moments of growth. I mean, we talk about this kind of stuff, like what's happened in our week, because it's what normalizes our daily routines, because we really we got to live in the now, in the present. And that's how we all connect in our community and realize that we're all going through different shit. So my story of what has happened to me this week, I've actually had a pretty tough week, but I've remained positive, but is not as happy. But my dad, he's pretty bad cancer. I think it's in his pelvic bones, and it was colon, and I think it's gone to his bones. But so as I was saying earlier, I grew up Jehovah's Witness. So I was never disfellowshipped in that religion, which means that my family still talks to me. Mm-hmm. But my mom's always stood up for me. But my dad, I've had very strange moments. He was not an asshole. I have a lot of really wonderful moments with him. And as a child, I remember him telling the cashier lady and that was checking out our groceries, "I appreciate you." He was very genuine. Like he would take me, my Jehovah's Witness experience was different than other kids. So he would take me out into the field to witness to the sheep herders in the covered wagon. Like, no shit. We literally went out, or on the ships, that would come in from the Philippines. And oh my God, it was one of the coolest experiences of my life. And so I had a really good childhood memories with my dad. But after, I was kind of the first person out of 5 children to leave the religion. So you guys can only imagine how difficult that was for me. So my dad has not really been there. We were super, super close. He delivered me at home, actually, you guys. He was the first one to even hold me or give me my first breath. So we were pretty close, and so he's dying and he's about ready to go into hospice. So he's got one more cancer treatment that he's decided to do, but the doctors are pretty much like, it's just not working. And so he's decided to go into hospice because I guess they get better quality of life that way, the sooner that they just admit it and go into there. So I will be going up to the San Juan Islands to see my dad, not this weekend, but the next, to say my goodbye. And actually, if any of you listeners out there would like to reach out to kind of share your story of like what you've gone through, I feel personally that I've already said goodbye to my dad, but I don't think that he's said goodbye to me. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Absolutely, 100%.
Because I feel like with all of these experiences that we've been talking about tonight, psychedelics, I have actually found my best friend dead from suicide. I have had these experiences that are very traumatic and so with my dad, we just have not been close for the last 20 years. So I truly believe that when you put your weapon down and you use love as your greatest weapon, you rise above your medicine man, your father, or your teacher. When you really truly accept love, which is kind of actually what you were talking about, is that intent to exude love. You don't even have to say anything. You can just exude love, and the people around you will feel that. And that is something that happened to me after that experience that I was telling you guys earlier. And so I have said goodbye to my dad. So I'm there for my family, for my mother, my other brothers. I will let my dad say goodbye, but that's something that I'm going through this week. So, but this is it for me.
You're 100% right. This is, and you've read that already. This is for him.
Yeah.
This is for him.
Yeah.
So that he can pass peacefully.
I feel, and you guys, I know that this sounds crazy. Well, maybe it doesn't. Maybe somebody will understand. I feel like, so my dad was not always a Jehovah's Witness. So out of my family, my younger brothers, I kind of paved the way for them. So you guys can imagine the family dynamic around me. So, but I've been around this family that is very sheltered. But my dad was the only one who celebrated holidays, who smoked weed, who went to war. He went to Vietnam, but he made friends with all the locals. So he was like me. He was very kind. Like he was bawling and traumatized because of the things that he saw. They were his friends. All of the people were his friends. And so he was very traumatized in his life. And I feel like because of my psychedelic experiences and my understanding that maybe I ultimately become the one out of the 5 children that has the one conversation with him that he needs to have as a Jehovah's Witness before he dies.
Yeah.
Because I know he knows.
Yeah.
I know he knows what I'm talking about. And
Yes,
I think
he
that's
does.
part of the thing that scares him about me the most.
Yes.
Is that he knows that I know.
You are so on point. And I don't know your dad, but my heart is telling
Gentle
me.
Ben. They call him Gentle Ben.
My heart is telling me you are so on point, and I love you, and I'm with you.
Thank
and let
you.
me know how I
Thank
can
you.
support you.
But
through
you
this
know,
time.
part of what we do with the real shit, you guys, is we connect people, we connect our community, we learn from each other. So instead of saying, this is what I think you should do, please say, this is what happened to me. You know, let's
In
break
my
down these
experience,
barriers
right.
and just using our words, how we approach things. Let's be more aware. We can support each other. New things are coming this way. Support it. Be open to it. Let's grow together, guys, not grow apart. So please, you guys, to go along with talking about the psychedelics and psilocybin and all of those things, we're running a campaign. We have a badass glow-in-the-dark mushroom t-shirt on our site. The front of it says the trip you want, and the back is the trip you need, and it's mushrooms. #legalize. So we can at least wear our words, right? Because we like to empower people with our t-shirts. So help, and actually a portion of the proceeds does go to help legalize psilocybin. So we are on board with helping out as much as we can. And we'll talk about how we can help you as well.
Cool.
So don't forget to...
Be a nice hole.